Wendy Brussen has been a serial entrepreneur for over 15 years, won several awards and nominations, had her own Dutch TV show, is a guest lecturer at the University of Amsterdam. She's an author and international speaker. Wendy is CEO and founder of the Super People Company, which helps companies to attract, retain, and develop their diverse workforce worldwide. She likes to do things differently if she sees conventional ways did not work or do not go fast enough. Wendy is the inventor of Equality Poly, the first management game to help companies not just talk about diversity, but also get into action. She is currently developing unconscious bias training in augmented reality. And she has developed a revolutionary model to get to an inclusive organization called AIM. I hope I pronounced the name of the game correctly.
Yes, you did.
Thank you. And with this, I turn the floor over to Wendy.
Well, again, hello to everybody, and also the ones that joined a little later. I'm really happy to do this. It's two topics near and dear to my heart because they're a little bit out of the ordinary, and that's already mentioned in the introduction that it is something that I'm very fond of, and especially if they're very effective. And so I'm going to start sharing my screen. Please interrupt me if you have any questions or write it in the chat, and Reina will monitor the chats and interrupt me if need be. So either interrupt me or use the chat. Don't wait until the end of the talk. Let's see if this works. That would be great. Sometimes it has issues. Can you all see this? Yes.
Yes.
Then we're off to a good start. So we're going to talk about sponsoring and reverse mentoring. And these are two very effective ways to transform your culture. And that's why I like them a lot. And that's why I like to implement them whenever possible. So my name is Wendy Brussen. And these are a couple of the organizations that we work with. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you the inclusion matrix. So reverse mentoring and sponsoring are not fit for an organization that is just starting with inclusion. If there isn't some sort of awareness available, and especially in management, it's not going to work. So you are either in phase 2 or phase 3, and then it's a very effective tool. If you start with this when you're in the foundation part of inclusion, it's not going to resonate as much, and definitely not gonna have the effect that you want it to have. So I don't, of course, know where your organization is at or the organizations that you work with, but this is something to keep in mind, that sometimes you have to do other stuff first before you can do sponsoring and reverse mentoring. So, and if everybody has questions about the inclusion matrix, I'll be more than happy to answer them later on. But for now, I want to talk about sponsoring first. So it's one of the two effective ways that we're going to be talking about, and this is the one that it actually came from Harvard. This is a quote that triggered my interest in sponsoring. And so it says, women are overly mentored and under-sponsored. It has to do with the research they did in 2010. It's already over 10 years ago that they did that. And what they found out is that the reason why a lot of women don't, get through to the higher regions is that they're not sponsored enough. And I'll talk about sponsoring before, but I found a really cute little image that sort of is a good hint on what's the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. I'm not saying that mentorship cannot be effective, but sponsorship is like the next step after mentorship. So the difference between the two is mentorship is sort of like on a suggestional, exploratory basis, and sponsorship is actively promoting somebody, actively making sure that that person gets the spotlight they deserve. So I found this one, I thought it was really cute. So why is it that effective? Because it's always nice to know why it is effective. And first of all, it's fast. Most sponsored projects are 3 to 6 months, and the results are almost immediately. So that's one good reason why it's so effective, because it's condensed, it's focused, and it's fast. And the other reason is, especially in a male-dominated organization, male sponsors are more effective than male mentors to create a difference. And another reason is that sponsors are personally invested way more than mentors, because mentors is sort of like if the mentee doesn't really take the next steps, it doesn't reflect on the mentor as much. It has consequences, of course, but not really of gravity. And in sponsoring, they are personally invested, and there's also risk involved. And that last part is maybe the one reason why it's that effective, because if a sponsor is involved in this and the sponsee is not progressing, that involves risk, because you are, as a sponsor, promoting this person, and if they cannot take the next steps, so it becomes not only a personal investment, but also it comes with risk, losing face and such. It's maybe not a nice thing to hear, but it's definitely why I think this is so effective. I don't want to let you go without tips on how to implement this successfully. Like I said, it only works best, and we've tried this with 9 months, but it's just not as successful if it's a short term. So stick within 3 to 6 months. And another thing that's really important is that sponsors really have to believe in their sponsee, in their capabilities, in their skills set, in the possibilities that these sponsees have. And so matching is key, but in a way that sponsors can choose their own sponsee. That also leads to some disappointments every once in a while. And also you'll see a sponsee that like 3 or 4 sponsors want to sponsor, because yeah, that happens. But if you as an admin do it, it's not as effective as when you let sponsors choose. It's also important that the sponsor is in a position higher up the hierarchy than the sponsee. I've known a couple of sponsors that were like colleagues of the sponsees, and that works too. But like the best sponsors are usually in a position of leadership above their sponsees. And it sounds obvious, but it's often forgotten. You have to train the sponsors and how to be a really good sponsor. And you have to sponsor diverse people. Preferably, the sponsee is of a different gender or a different multicultural background and such, because then you get the extra benefit of improving inclusion within the organization. So It also gives out a clear signal to the rest of the people in leadership that it's their responsibility to recognize talent, to promote that talent, and to make sure that they move up the ranks. So these 5 tips, I definitely recommend that you take them to heart and implement them when you're working on sponsoring. Any questions about this? Because it stays so quiet on the other side. Okay, then I'm gonna move over to the benefits of sponsoring. Like I said, it's fast. So if you want to change things within the organization, and especially with 1 tier up, this is the way to go. It takes 3 to 6 months, and it's fast. The other thing it does is if you put people in a sponsoring program, you sort of give them a tag that you value their talents. And if they find a sponsor, they're even valued more. So the talents that you have will feel much more engaged in the organization and appreciated and valued for what they can bring to the organization. So this is a great way to think about retainment of talents. The other thing you get is diversity of thought, obviously, because if you make sure that the sponsees are as diverse as possible, and when they make that next step as an organization, you'll get diversity of thought on the next tier, which obviously is a good thing. And I have to explain to you what the benefits of inclusion and diversity are? I don't think so, right? Yeah. So, and last but definitely not least, it improves inclusion because there's much more of a connection between 2 tiers or even tiers higher up. And it's also always good to mix and mingle those tiers. Also, one of the tasks of sponsors is to introduce these sponsees into their own network. And so if they do that, it will improve inclusion as well, because the rest of the network will get to know somebody of maybe a minority group or somebody that never met before because of the structure in that organization. So it improves inclusion as well.
Is this a good moment for a question, Wendy?
Yeah, go for it.
So Magdalena has posted a question in the chat. It's obviously not a given that a sponsor will be able to influence the organization enough in that time that the progression happens, is it?
It's in the chat?
Yeah, it's in the chat.
Okay, who asked that question?
Magdalena.
Can you ask me the question?
Yeah, sure. I can. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So I can ask you some questions about it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, it was just my thought, really a comment to say that obviously, with all the best intentions, it's assumed, or the goal is, that the sponsor will be able to influence the organization enough to for the progression to happen in that time.
Yeah.
But you can't. It's not a given, or it's not necessarily 100% going to happen. So I guess what I'm trying to ask is whether you feel a kind of closed time frame in agreement is beneficial, or is it actually counterproductive?
No, it's very beneficial because people react better to deadlines. So, and of course, between the starting point and say 6 months, you still have in between deadlines to make sure that they're on track. But that deadline definitely is a good incentive for people to work harder. Also, and this happens every time, you see this sort of like a competition almost between the sponsors happening, because they're like, ooh, I took my sponsee to this and this and that, and they were allowed to speak, and so la la la. And or hey, did you notice that my sponsee was taking the lead in such and such project, because I delegated that to that sponsor, to that sponsee. So if and usually what happens is one of the sponsees is taking that is allowed to take that next step, and and usually this can be done. Of course, you have to make sure that there's possibilities there, but most of the times these are talents that already have everything that they need, but they're overlooked or not looked upon or not visible enough, or they don't have the network to make sure that they can take that next step. And this is what this provides. And so I haven't seen what those sponsoring programs that we've led that like the majority, about 80–85% will get to the next step within 6 months, and the other ones that did reach that goal within 9 months. And what we usually do is when because they're not large groups, 1 or 2 usually that are sort of like left behind, we'll make sure that the sponsoring keeps on going until they've reached their goal. And that usually can be done, especially when you take another 3 months. Because sometimes, you know, the holiday season or stuff like that is in the way. The best time, by the way, it's not in my tips, but it's good that you ask. The best time to start this is at the beginning of the year, because it's usually that symbolic time when people love making steps, and they already thought about, you know, making the next moves, and also the organization has a clear view on where those open spots are. So because they usually do that in October, November, and then therefore starting a sponsoring program right after the holiday season is most of the times the best time to start this. And you also have the full 6 months. We all know that if you start this in September, you know, December is right around the corner. I always make that huge mistake that I always think, oh, second half year, forget it, you only have 3 months. So basically, so before everybody started up and already, you know, with the December things going on. So yeah, the best time to do this is like start end of January. That's like the best time to start. I also run sponsoring programs that had 2 shifts per year, but I definitely recommend the end of January, because it's easier. And yeah, you don't get interrupted a lot. Was that answering your question? Okay, cool. Anybody else?
There is one more question in the chat from Daniela. How can you measure KPIs? Oh, wait a second, I lost it. How can you measure KPIs within a company with a sponsorship program, or what kind of KPIs can be set?
Okay, so depends, of course, what those KPIs are, but one of the KPIs that you can set on this that it will influence the results towards those KPIs is, of course, having a certain kind of diversity in the next tier. So sponsoring can definitely contribute to that, and fast. So if you have a KPI and you have to, at the end of the year, you have to improve on that KPI or reach that KPI, sponsoring is the way to go. Was that a good answer, or any more questions?
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Anybody else?
Joanna has posted a question which I believe has to do with the first question which was asked. And Joanna's question is, does it not depend on the company? Oh my God, Y/E. I have no idea what that is. For instance, Microsoft starts in July. So I think it has to do with what you were saying about when to start.
Yeah, it has of course, I'm talking about most organizations have a January 1st to the end of the year. But of course, if you have an organization that the year starts at the 1st of April, because I know companies that do that, yeah, it would be wise to start at the beginning of that year. Thank you for pointing that out to me, Joanna. Joanna, sorry. I think it was Joanna, right? Yeah.
Yes, correct. Well, those are all the questions that I see in the chat.
Okay, then we're gonna move to the next topic, which is reverse mentoring. That's one of the other two very effective ways to transform your culture. And reverse mentoring, I want to start off with the statement that reverse mentoring will help you benefit, like you as an organization, from the diversity that's already there, but not where you would like it to be. And we see that a lot. We see that in the upper management, you see it lacks diversity on gender, or it can lack diversity on people of color, or, well, you can ... I mean, minority groups are often not just in that boardroom or in managerial positions. So reverse mentoring will help the organization benefit, or let the organization benefit from the diversity in lower tiers. And yeah, that's basically what it does. And so let's go over those benefits, because we all want to know the benefits before we start something, right? So again, this is also a really good way to retain talents, because they are now, and when you do reverse mentoring, I'll get into that later, they are also asked for their views, their insights, their knowledge on making decisions that would definitely have an effect on them. If you are asked to weigh in on those decisions, it will help you be more engaged. And engagement is the key if you want to keep your talents. So that's one. The other one is we all know that diversity can bring diversity of thought, and diversity of thought brings better decisions. That's one of the reasons why a lot of organizations are going for diversity. And reverse mentoring is an inclusive way to implement the diversity on places where it's not there yet. So this will bring you diversity of thought, even though you don't have them on that position yet. The other thing is that improves inclusion. It will get interactions going that otherwise weren't there. It will bring a more inclusive way that people are valued for what they can bring on diversity of thought. And so this is a good way to create that inclusion that you're looking for. It will also help get things along if you don't have an inclusive culture yet. It also brings diverse talents into the spotlight for potential succession. So there's a perk for the people that are volunteering to be mentor as well. Not only for the mentees, because the first three are definitely like a benefit for the mentees. But the first one, the visibility, is definitely a benefit for the mentor. Another thing, and that's why, and somebody already mentioned it, is future trends and being up to date with what a younger generation cares about, what they think is important, will definitely improve managerial decisions. So these are the benefits of reverse mentoring. Of course, I have tips for that as well. And it sounds obvious again, but you have to train the mentors and you have to train the mentees. And I would say put emphasis on the mentees. Normally, when you have a normal mentoring program, the emphasis is on training the mentors. But in this case, it's very important that you train mentees, and you train the mentees on what they can expect and also what is expected from them to make this a successful project. So, and the mentees are not used to be mentored by juniors, let me put it that way. And so it takes a bit of adjusting and also knowledge on how to be a good mentee. In this case, is hybrid matching a good way to go? And with hybrid, I mean both by the admin, somebody who's in the lead of this project, and by the mentees. It's more important to have the responsibility with the mentees than with the mentors in this case. And I already touched upon it, but if you are training the mentees, there also should be some kind of accountability by the mentees. So they are partially responsible for the outcome of this reverse mentoring. And it's very important that they realize this. And also it would be great if you can sort of guarantee that accountability in some ways in the organization. And a good way to do that is to communicate about the results and benefits that it brought to the mentees. Do you have a question, Rena? No? Okay, because you lit up in my screen, so that's why. So communication about the results and benefits, and so what it brought a mentee or what it brought a mentor, that would certainly help, but especially what the results and benefits were for the mentees is going to have an extra effect on the benefits of reverse mentoring, especially that. And I think I'm at the end. Oh, huh? Okay, hang on. Like half my presentation went off.
I have a question, Wendy.
Yeah, go for it.
As you are also talking about the talents, and so I was wondering what you mean by the talents. Can you to make it more concrete?
Okay, so a talent is a person in your organization, an employee that you don't want to lose. So it can be a talent of any kind, but somebody that you rather not see going to the competition or to another company. And so therefore I refer to them as talents, because it could be on all kinds of things that they have, they can bring to an organization. But thank you for asking. Anybody else?
Hi, Wendy, it's Tammy.
Yeah.
Could you please give an example of reverse mentoring, sort of like what that looks like, practically speaking? So maybe a situation that you've seen it happen and the mentee is responsible for selecting the mentor. So I'm just curious of an example.
Okay, so a good example that I've seen is that somebody of upper management was mentored by somebody in a factory who was a team lead of a group of people that worked in the factory. Most of the times I see it a lot is that where, like, say, the people that do stuff and the people that decide and think about stuff, there's usually a gap between them. And there's really good ideas and insights that you don't get unless you're on the work floor. So a really good way to get those insights, you know, across to the people that make decisions about what's in the end is going to affect the work floor. That is a good way to make sure that you get diversity of thought in there.
And what could that look like? Would it be just a conversation once a month, or?
It's like the normal mentoring, like the months that we're used to. Some organizations choose to do this every 2 weeks, but most of the times it's once a month, and like for several months in a row, because you need to get to know each other. And usually there's like a social event first, so people can get to know each other a little better. And then also there needs to be a mutual respect with both parties in order for this to work, of course. And then, yeah, and then normal mentoring programs have the same length of, like, say, 9 to 12 months. Most of them do. And this is the same length most of the times. I do know of a couple of mentor and mentees that got connected and they stayed connected. So I do see this happening, but in general, you know, it's a period of time, it's a project, and that takes about 9 to 12 months, depending on how the organization is constructing this. It takes time. And also decisions usually take a little time before they're implemented and such. So once every 2 weeks is maybe pushing it a bit, depending on, of course, on how urgent diversity thought is needed. Anybody else?
I have a question. Yes. So I don't know if we want to speak about reverse mentoring. I have a question about sponsoring.
Oh, okay.
If
Sure.
you don't mind. Yeah.
No.
So you spoke about being part of an organization or having sponsoring in an organization. What about if there's no, like, for example, I'm an entrepreneur, and I know that there are a couple of other people here are also entrepreneur. How, but we're part of one community, I would say PWN. How can we sponsor each other as part of this community?
So sponsoring within with entrepreneurs, I've seen that happening as well. I've seen a couple of good examples of investors that sponsor the entrepreneurs that they've invested in, and promote them actively to potential buyers, to potential media contacts that they have. And it will definitely help an entrepreneur to have a sponsor like that. It could also, and that's like the second version that I see a lot, is that when it's a very accomplished entrepreneur and they have all these contacts, and media can have a huge impact on an entrepreneur. So having a sponsor like that, who truly believes in what you're doing, in your product, in your company, can definitely do a lot of good to your company, for your company. So either an investor or an experienced and already made it entrepreneur. I've seen that too. So what they do is they expose their network to you. They promote you as, oh, this is a party that I've already invested in some kind of way. It could be with knowledge, or could be with money, worth investing in. And that also involves a risk, of course, for them. So that's when, you know, if there has to be some kind of risk in there, in order for it to really be effective and to work. So if you want to, you know, make sure that your business thrives and maybe do a little better, then finding a sponsor might be a better way than finding a mentor. But you usually, and sometimes I've seen this happening too, and it's really interesting. Sometimes a mentor becomes a sponsor because they already know, you know, what you're struggling with. They helped you with it. They've seen you grow under their mentorship. And so now they are ready to sponsor you as well. And so I've seen that happen more than once with organizations, but also entrepreneurs and networks of entrepreneurs that have a mentoring and a sponsoring program.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
Anyone else? It stays very silent. Oh, well, we're well in time.
I have a question, but it's for where you show the inclusion matrix. It's actually even before step 1, the foundation. So if it's okay asking this, so
Sure.
How do you even start conversations about inclusion and so forth with an organization where that's not even, it's a big blind spot for such an organization? And I'm asking this because I am considering working for a company which I like, but my meeting with them was like, that's not even there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to you, you would think, you think that is important, right? Inclusion is a very important issue for you, right?
Yes.
So that's
yes.
why you're asking. Okay.
Yeah.
To start up a conversation about inclusion, I wished, I mean, in this time that we're at, it should be on their agenda already. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's already on the agenda of, like, say, top management, but they haven't really displayed any kind of action on that yet. They haven't appointed somebody, there's no budget, they're not really, they don't have a mission and vision on inclusion yet, and so they don't have that on display. So you, I don't know at what level you talk with them, but like, it could be that either on the board or in the management team, it's already there, but they're not really active on it yet. That basically means that they're in phase 1. Before phase 1 means that it's not even on the agenda yet. One of the things that you can do is, you know, point out that the benefits of being diverse and inclusive, and especially if at the moment it's I always say, go where the pain is, and the pain at the moment is talents are walking away. That's one, and they're not easily replaced because the job market is that tight, and diversity and inclusion can help them with that. So if they don't care about what they actually should be caring about is the fact that, you know, the whole societal change and also the way that they look at the world, you can make them realize that it's in their best interest, business-wise, to be involved in this. And that, like I said, then start where the biggest pain is. And that at the moment, with most organizations, it's retention and attracting talents. You know, they're more engaged and they're more inclined to move their ass, basically, if it can bring them a benefit. Once they have that diversity on board, they also have to make sure that they stay. And inclusion will make sure that they benefit from that diversity, and also will help make people want to stay. So, so I would start there. I usually start there.
Thank you.
Even when they're in phase 1. Because it's easier to get people going and make them an enthusiast and really, dedicate time and effort to it. Anybody else? Thank you for that question, by the way. I thought it was brilliant. I love it when people ask questions like that. I also often get the question, how do you know if an organization is inclusive or has potential to become inclusive? And I always say, look at the management team or the board. If HR is not a member of the board, you're in for, well, more difficulties, because if you put people first, they should be in that team. If you don't, HR is going to be, it usually gets stuck with HR, and HR has a facilitating role, but it's facilitating. So they do listen to HR, but they don't have to do what they say. And for some, in order to become an inclusive organization, some things just have to be pushed through. And if you don't have anything to say about those things, it's going to be really hard, because then you have to convince people, and it will make the process more painful and more slow. I wish it was the other way, but that's the fact. So if people ask me, am I in the right at the right company? This is a good indication.
Do you think it's enough? Meaning it's a good start. I do also know of organizations in which HR technically is in the board, or it's represented in the board. The true trick is actually to what extent it's actually being listened to.
It's not enough.
Yeah.
But at least they're, on the same level.
Yeah. True.
And they don't have to negotiate or make them enthusiastic about things. The best D&I team, or inclusion team, I would say, but best D&I team has 6, like, say, areas of expertise in there: communication, leadership, HR, learning and development, recruitment and selection, and representatives of the minority groups that are out there. If you have those people in a team, and of course somebody of HR can take the lead, or an appointment D&I manager can take the lead, but then you have a fair chance of making the necessary steps to become a more inclusive organization. I've created a model and methodology around that even, and based on the 5 stages of inclusion, and where you have to have focus first before you can move into the next phase. So if you're interested in that, I'll be more than happy to connect and show you.
I'll be very happy to. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Well, you'll find me on LinkedIn. You have my name now.
Sure.
We can make a coffee date. Well,
Perfect,
only
you.
if I can drink tea though, because I don't like coffee. But yeah, and I'm even, I'm so proud about this. They even asked me to write a book about it. So I'm writing, typing my way every weekend. But I'm really happy, yeah, because it will definitely help others to move faster through those phases, because it's really possible, but yeah, it needs some structure and strategy. Anybody else? Oh, thank you, Raina, for putting it in there. Brilliant. I wish I've thought of it. Mary Jane?
Yeah, I just want to add, because of the reverse mentoring, this is something that's coming up. Wendy, and Tammy, I think as well, but I'm really involved in the Wise Move Society for the 50+ generations. And I think, we're facing 5 generations in the workplace at this time. And there is a lot of stereotypical thinking around the older generation, as there is about the younger. Let's face it, we hear of the millennials, and we group everyone who's a millennial into one group, and Gen Z, and whatever. So it goes both ways. But I think this reverse mentoring is really, really going to be something. If more organizations adopt this program,
definitely bridge a gap. Yeah,
it will bridge a gap. It definitely will. So yeah, I think it's extremely important for those of you that are working in organizations, and especially if you're anything to do with DEI. Something I read recently, I haven't researched if this is a true statement, but it was in a post, a comment in a post, that only 8% of organizations even see or have any vision around ageism in their DEI strategies. So
actually,
8%.
I know that research, and I work together with somebody who's is actually a scientist on this topic.
Yeah,
European wide, and yeah. And
okay.
the funny thing is, there's a lot of solutions on problems that we have around productivity, and about keeping older employees 100% productive on this. There's a lot to be gained if you involve yourself on the knowledge. Well, if you know more about ageism and also how to counter it. And I'm actually working on a scan to get that clear, the possibility to learn, and also the readiness to work on development, because a lot of older people are excluded from development
Absolutely.
by managers, which is kind of weird, because we have in our mind, we have this stuck idea that anybody over 50 is almost retiring, which of course is not the case, because in the Netherlands, for instance, you cannot retire, and I'm counting it to be 70 by the time I reach that age, and I'm 52, by the way. So that means I still have to work for 18 years. 18 years, and the people that are over 50 usually don't switch jobs anymore, which means you as an organization are sort of stuck with people that could have full potential, but you're overlooking them. And if people are not asked to participate in a really cool project, or to participate in a cool training that would benefit them, it works vice versa, right? It's sort of self-fulfilling prophecy that if you overlook them, they don't consider them to be eligible for stuff like that either. And so you see that's a whole other topic, by the way, but yeah, you can see I'm passionate about any kind of inclusion, I'm guessing, but yeah. And thank you for raising that question or remark. Anybody else? Love the conversation here. Thank you. I'm not saying that because you're not saying this, but because of the other questions we had before.
Wendy, I wanted to thank you, but I got distracted. But yeah, it resonates. Everything that you shared, it resonates with me as well. So thank you.
Cool. Then I think we can wrap it up then, Reina.
Yeah,
I think so.
One thing from my side, not actually, a couple of things. Thank you, Wendy, for today's presentation. It was amazing. And the podcast that we did together is going to come out next week. So about the same subject. So you can follow Wendy and follow her posts, because the podcast also comes with amazing content. And also I want to thank Reina. Thank you for organizing these amazing events.
Yeah, I second that.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you all for, let me stop recording now.